What's up, everybody? Tom Pelissero here with Judd Zulgad on Wednesday. Judd, the Vikings alive for another week at 7-6,
Yes.
and some interesting remarks from Leslie Frazier again today. You can almost ride the ebb and flow of Leslie Frazier's perception of his quarterback and of the future of the position from week to week. Today it was, well, these next 3 games are going to be a defining moment for Christian Ponder's development. It's a little tough to buy the fact that somehow you're going to get a defining moment out of a guy who is being asked to be little more than playing keep away, to be a caretaker on the field.
Yep.
But at the same time, the thing that I will wholeheartedly agree with Leslie Frazier with is you're playing to your strengths. You're going to run the football. If that's what you want to be as an offensive run strateger in Peterson, I would look at the quarterback and the receivers right now and say, well, we got to be shooting the ball downfield.
And here's my question. If this is a defining moment, these next 3 games, what are the expectations? What are they going to ask this guy to do?
But that's precisely it.
But I mean, I have no clue what they're going to ask him to do, and I don't even know who's asking him to do what. It's almost like, here's what's weird about the Vikings right now. They're far better than anyone, including everybody at Winter Park, thought, right? So they're almost on 2 tracks. They're parallel tracks, but they're not the same. The one is the Ponder track, which is like a 4-win team right now, and the one is the 7-win track team, and they're not going to ever meet. And so it's sort of like Ponder's operating in his own stratosphere, the rest of the team's operating in their own.
But how much?
That's what's interesting.
How much of it do you put directly on Christian Ponder? They take 2 deep shots. They take 2 shots where they get favorable looks against the Bears. One of them, Ponder puts on the money, and Devin Aromashodu clowns it into an incompletion.
Yep.
The other one with Jarius Wright, Ponder said today the key was just he didn't put enough on it. He thought it was a fine decision. I would still say once the timing of the play gets thrown off and you're stepping back and you're throwing off your back foot, don't throw it at all.
And as you pointed out, though, that Jarius Wright play was late in the half. It was almost sort of like a punt.
Yeah.
It
didn't
was
kill
bad,
him.
but it didn't kill him.
It's a bad miss.
But what
you
I'm
want to
saying-
hit on it.
But my whole thing about the parallel tracks is, I'm not saying that's all Ponder's fault. I'm saying it's interesting because it's clear they still want to develop this guy. I mean, let's be honest. In an ideal world, what do you have right now? You have a team that's overachieving. You have a veteran quarterback that maybe stepped in 3 games ago, Gus Frerotte, for instance, okay? He took over, and then you sort of find out about Ponder later. They're not going to do that, and I have no problem with what the Vikings are trying to do. It's just a really interesting dynamic because I don't think you see this that much.
But here's the deal. You're in a position right now where you feel Christian Ponder gives you the best chance to win. And I think that that's a reasonable position.
Because you put yourself in that position.
I'm not saying if you're down 2 touchdowns in St. Louis that you don't go to Joe Webb and play the video game offense and see what happens. I don't know that you've reached that point, but if you're Leslie Frazier, you've got to operate within the confines of your reality right now, which is you're not going to go out and get a quarterback right now.
No.
You've put everything into Christian Ponder.
No.
The offense is running efficiently, and now, and this is not to give Christian Ponder credit for the way Adrian Peterson's been running, but you still have a quarterback you feel comfortable with. He knows when to check. He knows what the looks are that you're looking for at a given time, and on some occasions that may help. Everything that comes together on offense isn't necessarily reflected in the numbers. There is a comfort factor, and that's what they've gotten to right now, but you're also trying to make the playoffs. You've already gotten to a point, Judd, where you've won 7 games. You picked them to win 4?
4. Yeah, they've massively overachieved.
They're 7-6. They're playing for something in late December.
Yes.
I would say Leslie Frazier, at this point, can feel fairly comfortable. Number 1, that you're not going to ask him about this, but number 2, that his job is not on the line. I think beating Chicago locked in Leslie Frazier, locked in his ability to make whatever changes he feels are going to be necessary here. So he sees a 3-game season with Christian Ponder, and if things don't do well, Leslie Frazier may look back to this after the season when talking with Rick Spielman about the future of the position and saying, you know what, we've got to at least bring in some competition here and give ourselves options.
What's so interesting about this to me is the Minnesota Vikings front office has put themselves in this position with their quarterback on purpose because they desperately wanted to see what they had. I'm telling you, this goes back to how Spielman saw Brad Childress operate. And he saw Tavares Jackson get a chance, get pulled. Veteran takes over. Then you bring Tavares back. Get a chance, get pulled. Spielman never had any intention of going down this road, but what makes this so interesting is the Vikings are so much better record-wise than everybody, including Rick Spielman, thought they would be, and that's what makes this so intriguing. But I agree with you. Leslie Frazier now is in a position where he's been a good soldier, he's been a good employee, he's won 7 games, he is going nowhere. I will also say this. Christian Ponder's not going to get pulled because if you're ever going to pull Christian Ponder, you would have pulled him in Green Bay. That's where you would have run the Joe Webb gimmick offense. That's where you would have run it.
But they hadn't reached the point where they had discussed it, and that would have to be an organizational decision. I'm not saying from a production standpoint you're wrong.
They're still not discussing it.
I believe that it came up in their meetings last week.
Well, it should have come up ages ago, but it's to me, if you were going to run the gimmick, if you're going to run that offense, you're going to run it once, and you pick your spot, and Green Bay was the perfect position to do it, and they didn't do it. I don't know that they would do it now. I really don't. And for everybody that thinks Joe Webb struggled in training camp, which he did, keep in mind they were asking him to run Bill Musgrave's offense. if you bring in Joe Webb now, you're not going to ask him to run the Bill
But
Musgrave offense.
and let's also not forget about this. And this again goes to the point of what you're attempting to do. And you have something that's very successful right now. Well, all of a sudden, if you put Joe Webb into the offense, does that change some things you do in terms of your approach, in terms of how you're utilizing the run game? I still think that the Vikings, the fact that Joe Webb has not been on the field in any capacity, put him in the slot every now and then or something to hold a backside end when you're running some of those zone plays with Adrian Peterson, I'm surprised we've gotten to this point and that hasn't happened. But if you put Webb in there, do you trust that Joe Webb on 3rd and 7 is going to be able to deliver a ball on target? For all Christian Ponder's flaws, when he throws those slants and those in-breaking routes with his feet set, that's a ball he can throw.
I know. I'm telling you, they put themselves in this position because they never expected to be in this position right now.
You didn't think you were going to be 7-6. In other words,
you didn't, and now they
hoped,
and now they are where they are. They want to find out what they have in Ponder. And the other problem that you have is if you lift a healthy Ponder now, and then you say, okay, Joe Webb comes. Let's say he wins the game for you, but you're not going to start Joe Webb the next week.
Well, it's a can of worms. That's why you've never considered it to this point.
And what is our contention about Ponder? A lot of it's mental. So if you lift him now and then you put him back in, you're going to be goofing with his psyche even more, and I don't think they have any interest.
They didn't want to crush him, and they didn't want to open up the Joe Webb questions. They didn't want to have it become a level of uncertainty. Right, wrong, or indifferent. That was their approach going through this.
How much fun is this? Seriously.
To not have a team that's completely dead and buried, and we're talking about who's going to be fired?
And the quarterback controversy. I mean, it's not there, but it is. I mean, this has been... We sat there in training camp at Mankato, and I picked him for 4, and I think you picked him for 6 wins. Mm-hmm. How much more entertaining is this to actually have all these things bubbling up? If nothing else, they're great storylines.
But this was always the goal, though, too. The goal was to be relevant into December, and I thought you needed to get...
They didn't think they were going to be, and we didn't either.
No, I thought that they were going to be 4-4 at the midpoint, and I thought then those next 4 games were going to be a battle, and they'd probably fall off right about now. They found a way to beat Chicago. Mm-hmm. I think if they don't give the ball away at Chicago and at Green Bay, they probably win one of those games. They're in an even better position. Yeah. You look at the standings right now, and you look at the way the Bears have played over their past 5 games. I thought for a lot of the season that the team they were chasing was probably Seattle, and that Seattle would come apart. Seattle now, with their young quarterback, Russell Wilson, is winning games because of Russell Wilson. The Bears have a lot of issues, and who would have thought, especially with the way that Cutler and Brandon Marshall are going right now, mm-hmm. that's one of the worst offenses in the league. They can't score points.
They can't score points. The defense is old, and it's now starting to fall apart.
So if you start to feel the Bears are going to lose. The Bears are going to lose to Green Bay on Sunday.
And by the way, the head coach there might get fired.
Lovey
might get fired. The GM didn't hire him.
Well, it's
not his GM, and they have fallen apart, and it's not all his fault. But they have definitely have issues. They have huge issues.
Well, the whole deal last year was, you got to get the backup quarterback. You can't run the risk. They give Jason Campbell $2 million guaranteed, and Jason Campbell fell flat on his face in San Francisco. He did lead them to a touchdown against the Vikings, but I talked to one defensive player after the game who said when they were looking at Jason Campbell across the line of scrimmage, and the sign in his eyes was pure fear. It was looking around as though he had no idea what was going on. He wasn't ready for it. The Bears have issues. That's the point, though. If the Bears lose to Green Bay and the Vikings beat St. Louis, all of a sudden, they're in a logjam there, and they're going to have some tiebreakers come out in their favor. But the Vikings would be right there, which going into the season is more than they probably were asking for.
So what if they somehow miraculously, the Vikings make the playoffs, and we're talking about should Christian Ponder be starting game 1 of the playoffs?
No, that won't come up. If they make the playoffs, Christian Ponder has played well enough for him to be out there.
Or Adrian Peterson.
You're past the point of no return on this.
Well, I think they already are, to be honest with you. But it's still a hell of a conversation to have about who should be the starting quarterback or what's going on with the starting quarterback with a team that is above 500. That was 3-13 last season. And oh, by the way, they might have the MVP of the league. No matter what anybody says, he's got to be in the conversation.
And the better that Ponder plays over the final 3 games, the stronger Rick Spielman's argument for continuing to develop him is probably going to be after the season. He's Judd. I'm Tom. Full Vikings coverage, as always, at 1500ESPN.com. We will see you.